Amelia Hugo Fontanelle. I'm a curator at the Cary Graphic Arts Collection at Rochester Institute of Technology. And as a way of keeping our wonderful community get together, we've been sponsoring lectures over our quarantine time called Cary Online. And this is one of them. Cary Collection, if you haven't visited or if you're traveling from afar, is a rare book library that focuses on the history of graphic communication. And as such, we have a lovely collection of over 45,000 volumes focusing on history of printing, graphic design, typography, calligraphy, and anything related to the book arts like bookbinding or paper making or paper engineering artist books. We also collect wonderful archival collections, paper collections, original primary source documents. And that is going to be the topic of our talk today, because in 2017, we welcomed Cary Summer Fellowship recipient, whose name is Shani Avni. She came to study the singular collection we have on the work of Ismar David, a prominent Israeli, American, German type designer, book designer. And she did this work in 2017 as part of her typeface design master's thesis at the University of Reading in England. Shani researched the David Hebrew typeface family. Shani Avni is an independent designer and researcher. She holds a bachelor's degree from Shankar College of Design in Tel Aviv, and as I said, a master's in typeface design from University of Reading in the UK. The wonderful thing, and this is one of her first appearances as an employee of the Cary Collection, she is now our Ismar David visiting assistant curator. And so she's curating the Ismar David collection and also is a fine designer, typographer, typography expert in her own right. So we're very happy to have her join the Cary Collection team. And so without further ado, I want to welcome Shani. She's sitting in the Cary press room, well, virtually, and I'm sitting in the Cary reading room, give her talk on Ismar David and the development of the David Hebrew typeface family. Shani, you want to take it away?
Yes, thank you so much, Amelia, and thank you all for joining us today. I'm very, very excited to be here, to be virtually here with all of you. Before I start my talk, I would like to take one moment and to acknowledge the upsetting recent events. And I'd like to share in the chat a link to a list of anti-racist resources that RIT Libraries has curated. I found it very helpful for me, and I just thought that perhaps some of you would also want to have a look. So this is it. And now I'll share my screen. Okay, so this is Ismar David. He was born in 1910 in Breslau, then Germany, today's Poland. And in 1928, he moves to Berlin and he goes to study decorative arts in the Arts and Craft School in Berlin. This is where he learns a lot about calligraphy and letters in general. He joins an international competition for the design of a book cover for the Jewish National Fund, also known as Kakal. And in 1932, his design is chosen. This is the design, the winning design of Ismar David for the National Jewish Fund for the cover of this very large book that they're producing every couple of years for the donors that donate money in order to build the State of Israel. He arrived at Jerusalem and he stayed there for the following 2 decades before he immigrates to New York to continue his design work. And during that time, he's getting a lot of commissions. A lot of them has to do with the temporary government of Israel, as you can see here, for the Ministry of so documents for the Ministry of Finance, some poster for the Haganah, the paramilitary organization of Israel, postage stamps, banknotes, all those documents and materials that needed to be made from scratch for the new state. And of course, he's doing a lot of commercial work as well. I'm showing you here some process work of his lettering. So this is all done by hand, and a very masterful hand indeed. You can see the letters in Hebrew and in English, a lot of work also in German, and combining two of the alphabets together. I hope you can see the whiteout and see how intricate his lettering work is and how impressive. This is a very fancy ad for a margarine. So yeah, and again, everything is drawn by hand. But you can't design everything with drawing type by hand, right? Sometimes there is a larger amount of text in your item, and you have to use a typeface for it. And this is where David realizes the shortage of typefaces that there is in Jerusalem at that time. And we can tell that when he reflects back on that time, he shares that his dream was to enable every printer in the country to produce well-planned and well-organized printing for books and commerce, aesthetically comparable to printing with Roman type. So here he identifies the needs of the time and the surroundings, and what Hebrew type is lacking and Roman type has. So for us to understand this better, let's talk a little bit about typeface families and how we know them from the Latin type. If we can read this ad with me of the Cheltenham typeface family, you can pick up almost any newspaper or magazine and you will find the Cheltenham family dominates the pages. The reason is that there is a weight and a shape for every requirement. And these are two different things that I just want to kind of put a spot on. So the weight has to do with how dark, with how heavy, how bold the letter is. But it always have the same shape. So you can see that the regular, the medium, the bold, the shape of the letters is the same. While the italic, on the other hand, has a different shape. So this is a different style that can always also come in 3 weights. And this is a very important tool for typesetters back then, and of course today, to handle long amounts of text when they are designing it, when we are designing it, and to make the text friendlier, easier to read, more precise to read. And you can see the different effects that those weights or shapes or styles have when you look at like a paragraph of text. So if we are using heavier weights, it has a different sound, a different voice. Maybe we're saying something in a louder voice. While when we're using italic, we just want to make sure that those specific words or sentences are part of the main text, but maybe they come from somewhere else. They have a different meaning. Maybe it's a name or a quote or something that it doesn't necessarily have to be louder, but just slightly different. Sorry. Okay, so if we're getting back to this king of all type, the extensive typeface family of Cheltenham, you can have a look and see that this family has 24 members. Different styles, different weights. Every style or weight has its own purpose, if it's headlines, if it's differentiation, if it's emphasis, but they are all connected. They have a visual relationship to one another. And this is the thing that made it very easy for typesetters to do their job. They would get a bundle of these typefaces together, and technically it would be an advantage. Another example of this relationship that typefaces can have with one another. So we can see from these posters that some of the typefaces that it used are all sharing a slab serif style. And it has this inner sense and hierarchy, and something that is very easy to read and not very distracting. It takes you where you want to, and gives you what you want, what you need to understand quite quickly. And this poster is only here so we can better understand the situation in, for example, 1934, sorry, in Haifa. So when a typesetter was challenged with typesetting a poster, having very little resources and very little physical typefaces that he was able to bring from Europe mostly, he would have to find whatever he had in his press room and to collect all the letters into one document. And for this specific example, we have five different typefaces that I've managed to collect. And I think you can very quickly see this chaotic sense that this gives you. And if this is not enough, there are some specific words, sentences, some information within this text that the typesetter would want to emphasize. And without having a structured family, again, he would have to mix and match. So maybe with, as we can see here, with one sentence, he would use two different sizes of type. And maybe you would need to underline some words to create this, this emphasis. So for us to better understand the situation of type and typography in Israel at that time, I want to very quickly to share the story of the development of the Hebrew script and type. So the modern Hebrew letter developed from the Aramaic or Assyrian, alphabet around 560 BCE. And it was the language of the Israelite and the Judean people for over 1300 years. When around 200 BCE, it died as a spoken language and was restricted to religious practice. And it was only reintroduced as a spoken language around the 1880s. So we have this very long period of time where Hebrew existed only in one specific place. And when you compare it to other languages that were spoken and were used daily, you can see this evolution and development of a language and a script that simply did not happen for the Hebrew. On top of this, the only, or most of the people that were allowed to write the Hebrew letters were scribes, and they had to follow a certain set of rules that didn't give them a lot of space to maybe change or refine or introduce some improvements to the letter shapes themselves. So those letters were fixed and they're very similar to the ones that we read and we use today. And again, that very long process of development and change did not happen for Hebrew. We do have a period in time around the 15th century in Europe where some communities enjoyed some time to work in their presses and to refine their printed products. But again, they suffered a lot of persecution, and very often they were forced to flee and relocate with their presses, and that prevented this continuous and natural development that is needed for the refinement of type. And it also means that the concept of typeface family did not develop in the same way that it did for the Latin script, for example. So this is how a newspaper would look in 1935 in Tel Aviv. And again, you can see this combination of very different typefaces. What is true for all of them is the fact that they were all made in Europe and their design was heavily influenced with their surrounding. So a lot of things that were very fashionable and were working very, very well with the Latin alphabet were just adopted or pasted on or forced into the Hebrew letters, while not following the true need that the letters have in order to be readable. So I want to share with you another quote of David, reflecting back on his work and on the moment that he understands that this is his new venture, this is his challenge. We don't have any typeface family existing in Hebrew, and he decided to start and design it. And he says that when he decided to venture into type design of Hebrew characters, it was clear to me that this design would have to be much closer to classic Oriental Hebrew than the typefaces that had developed in Europe. What I set out to do was to bring basic forms closer to the true old Semitic forms. So it wasn't about trying to fix the existing type that originated in Europe. It was going back and doing a lot of research into the original shapes of the original Hebrew, meaning how it was written, using what writing tools and what writing surfaces it was written on, really learning the ductus, the way that the strokes were drawn, and internalizing this history. And this is the original ink drawing of the comprehensive typeface family. And I remember the first time I saw this image, it was very exciting because as a designer, I didn't know of the existence of this typeface family. And I knew that I was struggling as a type designer and a typographer, exactly in those situations when I had to work with long amounts of text. So in this family, we have 9 members. The 3 first ones would be the regular style. So the book style, it can also be the Roman, an equivalent of a Roman. Let's say the first shape of this typeface family, the basic shape that was designed for use in long documents, books, newspapers, everything that has to do with long amounts of text set in small sizes. The second style, the second shape, as we saw before, is the italic style in 3 ways. And the last one is the monolinear style, which is an equivalent to a sans serif Latin in 3 ways as well. And I want to dive in and to share with you some of the really extraordinary features of this typeface and to try and retrace David's work process. We don't have a lot of information about the process itself. Unfortunately, he did not document his work. So I was kind of trying to come up with a lot of educated guesses because I was, of course, very curious, but also because I think that we can learn a lot from just understanding the process and how he approached it. So we talked about the fact that he started with research and he started with looking at the original Hebrew. If I can just pull out one word from the Dead Sea Scrolls, just as a general glance, I think I can see this visual correlation, especially when I'm looking at these areas of the letters. And to make it even clearer, I want to have this comparison between Frank-Ruhl, which is a typeface that was very popular at the time and still is today. So the Frank-Ruhl would always be on the top and the David Hebrew would be at the bottom. And in this way, I want to kind of highlight those very specific features that David introduced to his typeface. So I was talking about that shape. If you can see that left corner of the Resh, we call it the in-stroke. It could look similar to a serif in Latin. And you can see that in the David Hebrew, we have this kind of a triangular shape. At the Frank-Ruhl, it looks very, very different. This triangular shape actually mimics the movement of the reed pen on the writing surface. And only in that very tiny detail, you can very quickly see this correlation with the origin of the script. Another problem that David addresses with his new design is the fact that in the Hebrew script, in the alphabet, we have many groups, couples or groups of letters that are written very, very similarly to one another. And that, of course, creates a very challenging situation where they can be mistaken for one another. So, and one example from 1475, if we can look closely at this sentence and these specific letters, they are not the same letters. So this is very challenging, especially when you have small type and challenging, in a challenging printing situation. And this phenomena is carrying, going with us at all times. This is an example from 1741. I don't know how about the Hebrew readers here with us, but I came out with all of these options, and I don't know what is actually written here. Because I speak Hebrew and because I took this illustration from a book that was printed in the ghetto Prague, I can, from the context, I can guess that it's either basar or kasher because it has to do with the Jewish butcher. But you can see that this is an actual problem that could be solved typographically. And unfortunately, this is something that we still see on the streets and can definitely create very unfortunate situations. So here again, just by comparison, to see how those couples of letters are being treated very differently in the David Hebrew, while they're more similar to one another in the Flam rule that preceded it. Okay, if we move forward to the italic style, which is again very groundbreaking because it was the first true italic, an authentic italic for the Hebrew. And I just want to refresh our visual memory about the use of italic and how we can use an italic companion for an upright typeface to create easier reading. And if we go back to the situation having no typeface families, having no italic styles to go with the book style, I was very, very interested to see examples in printed material around those areas, because you can see here that there is a combination of two typefaces, and they're very, very different. This one that uses to print names is even slanted. But again, it's not the relationship between a typeface, a regular typeface, and its italic companion. They feel very, very different from one another. And what was even more interesting to me was to find linotype specimen from around that time that was a major source for buying those typefaces. They were not manufactured in Israel. Everything had to be imported. And you can see here that the Linotype Corporation is selling those two typefaces together. So they are actually technically offering it as main text and a companion, even though I think you can look mostly on the right side and see how different they are, how dark the Frank rule at the top looks, and how light and very geometric the Miriam typeface at the bottom. But this is something that typesetters could very easily use. So perhaps this is something that that encouraged this typesetting convention in Israel at that time. But what David does, again, is not trying to fix the situation, but go way back into the origin of writings. And he addresses the fact that Hebrew has several writing styles. The most dominant of them would be those three: the formal square one, which we've been seeing in the examples up until now, the semi-cursive one that you see in the middle, which is also called Ktav Rashi, and the informal cursive, which is an everyday writing style of fast writing. The semi-cursive style, Octav Rashi, is a very interesting reference for an italic style, because we can see historically that it was used as a secondary style. It was mostly used for commentary of religious texts. So in the examples that we see here, we can see the main text set in the formal style, in the square Hebrew typeface, but around it, the typesetter is using a different shape of letter to say this is not the same text, it's not of the same hierarchy, it's set all around it and it looks different. So, and that is the semi-cursive style. So what I think Ismar did when he was looking for reference and looking for ideas for his true italic was to have this transformation, if you will, from the regular style, the base style, which you see on the right. In the middle is the semi-cursive, the Rashi style, and in the left, the italic letter bet, which somehow have all of these aspects together in a very, very impressive design. If we look at an example of the informal writing style, which is again very fast writing, you can see all the loops that are created on the writing surface. This happens in many scripts and languages. And this is another thing that I think David managed to incorporate into his letter in a very sophisticated way. The last style is the monolinear style. And I think that the source of reference here is the Hebrew inscriptions and mosaics. And we can just pull out some letters. You can see what a close visual relationship those letters have. That was a very brief introduction, maybe, to my to the research that I did for my MA dissertation in Reading. I just want to share with you the spread from this book on the left, the work of Ismar David, which I highly recommend, and the next one to it that deals all with the design for the book jackets that David designed. David was such a prolific designer. He did so many things besides type design and lettering and calligraphy that we're seeing today. So if you want to learn more, this is my recommendation to you. And I'll very quickly share with you the birth of the typeface and how it and its life until today. So it was produced in New York for the Intertype Corporation in 1954. The regular style and the italic style in 2 sizes. And by the time it arrived to printers and typesetters in Israel, it was a major success. It was used as it was intended to in publications, in books, for poetry. And we have really beautiful examples of those printed books and documents that really, that really show the typeface at its best. And on top of the technical problems that this type design solved, it also played a very crucial part at the visual identity of the people that lived in Israel at the time, because those pioneers were reinventing themselves as the new Jews, and visually they were looking to get as far away as possible from the old European Jews. And there was something so modern and so new that was so related to the roots at the same time with these typefaces that I think it's safe to say that that was also part of its great success. And I will jump ahead in time many, many decades and many technologies to kind of start to talk about the digital world that we live in today, and the sadder part of the story of the David Hebrew typeface. So as we went on with technology and different adaptation for different printing methods, something happened that happens to a lot of very popular typefaces in many places, and very quickly people started basically stealing the design and reproducing it, of course, damaging it on the way, copying it, and releasing a lot of versions that were used that were very, very untrue to the original design. And I just want to share with you, I think one of my favorite quotes from David, saying, because he was well aware of the fact that this is being done. And I think one thing that he said really describes very well what a typeface is. He said that anyone can copy the shapes of the letters, but nobody can copy the spaces between them. And to me, this is it's a very good way to look at the typeface as a whole. This is just something that I find very interesting. In the 1990s, Microsoft is launching its Hebrew version in Israel, and they are providing it with a default font that it's called Gutman David, and cannot be farther away from the original design. If we overlap the letters, you can clearly see how different it is. However, this is gaining a lot of popularity, and around those years, the David Hebrew typeface is considered to be this word typeface. And if that is not enough, this version is being adopted by the government as the official typeface for any correspondent that has to do with that. So a very different situation from the original books that were printed with the original type. And of course, typesetters and designers were avoiding using this typeface because of those reasons, I think. But in 2012, we have a very exciting new digital project. Helen Branshaft, that worked very closely with Ismar David, is redrawing all the original outlines, and with Monotype, the complete family is released for the first time. So it's out there in the world for designers to use. Of course, typesetting conventions are a very prominent thing. And the fact that the typeface was available to purchase, and even in 2016 is now, since 2016, is available for free through Google, doesn't necessarily mean that it is being used in the original way that David intended it to be used. So just a few examples that I've pulled out from more or less recent publications. We can see the same practice of combining very different typefaces together in order to differentiate. And underlining all those practices are very common still, even though David Hebrew is available, and also type designers are, Israeli type designers are coming up with new designs that also have extended families nowadays. But I do want to finish on a positive note, and just share with you some examples of the use of the original David Hebrew, which is always such a joy for me to see. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Wonderful, Shani. So if you'd like, we can address some questions right now.
Sure. Yes.
So up to you, my friends in the call here today. You can type in a question in chat, or please unmute yourself and ask away. I do have one. Very informative, a lot of accolades. So thank you very much. Maybe, Shani, to start us off, can you tell us about the Carey collection, Ismar David collection, perhaps?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, of course. So a lot of people I know in Israel are asking me how come the David archive is in Rochester. And as I mentioned before, David immigrated to New York and spent most of his life and his artistic and design career in New York. This is why the best place to keep those that kind of archive is at the Carey Collection. And it really is fascinating to see in how many medias and how many products and how many avenues of design he practiced throughout his career. I know that I have so much work to do, and I keep discovering more and more things that are not necessarily related to Hebrew or to Hebrew typography or to Hebrew type design or calligraphy. But I think you can really sense his hand and his understanding of shapes and throughout all of his items, even in his architectural work and in his furniture, 3D work. So there is a fascinating thread that you can see throughout all of his work.
All right. There's a question from Renata. She's asking how large the collection is and what is in it.
So I think we have about 100 containers. We have correspondence and a lot of materials about him as an educator. So he taught Hebrew calligraphy and Latin calligraphy, and we have all of his writings, all the works for the 2 books that he published relating to teaching calligraphy. There is piles and piles of sketch and process work. Unfortunately, most of them are not very annotated, not dated, not titled, so there's a lot of research work to be done there. I'm trying to think what else. His illustrations are something that deserves, again, so much space and so much time. Very unique style, and very interesting technique. His work with colors, with printing productions, book covers design, as we saw in Misha Bileskit's book. He designed over 200 covers for books, and yeah, so a lot of work, kind of just covering his whole life career.
Super. And I just put in the chat the link to the archival resource that we have. So take a look there. It's called Archive Space, so you can get a listing. We have a question from Gloria Condrup. She's saying, could you talk, Shani, a little bit about his upbringing, childhood, and different kinds of influences?
Yes, yes. So this is again a very interesting kind of part of life when you research or a designer and you try to have a full picture of like his mind, basically, right? So he was born into a Jewish family. They weren't very religious, but they were they lived as Jews, but they were very, very they grew up as a very active members of the local community. I remember reading in the book about him that his father would have like ways to navigate, going out to the streets. He was not allowed to shave his beard as a Jew, but he would use a cream, so he would look as if he didn't have a beard, or he would put his tzitziot inside his pants, but he would wear them. So I think there was this duality with his upbringing at all times. The time that he spent in Berlin, Charlottenburg, in the arts and crafts school, he mentions specific teachers, painters, and calligraphy specifically, that were very very influential to him, which is another avenue of research, which is really interesting. And unfortunately, I don't think there's a lot of information on that. But I think those years when he learned calligraphy and really learned the meaning of working with letters, very much paved the way and kind of let his interest and his talents carry on. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. So I have a question from David Cooper. David, would you like to unmute and ask your question? I'm not sure I follow it
Yeah,
exactly. I want you to make sure you get it.
it just seemed to me that he's creating the David font during the time of the Yishuv, when there's a real rejection going on of things that have to do with ghetto Judaism. So that, in a sense, isn't almost like a political choice to try and go back to a pre-ghetto type style to as part of the revival in the period of the Yishuv and the establishment of the state.
Yeah. I don't know for sure. We don't have any documentation regarding that. But from what I know, I don't think it was a political statement. I think he was looking to leave Berlin because of the political situation, because he wanted to focus on his design work, and he realized that he can't do that in the environment that existed back then in around that time in Berlin. And I think that he's doing something that that you can see. There's many examples in other Israeli design that is, again, trying to take things that originated in Europe and kind of recreate them or change them in order to be Israeli or local. But I think that David, once he arrived in Jerusalem and in Israel, and he was very, very inspired by the surrounding, the geography, the weather, the views, he took a lot of it in, and I think his way of researching the origin, looking at archaeological findings from the area that has to do with writing the origin of the Hebrew letter geographically in the space. I wouldn't call it a political statement, but I think that was the way to connect and to create something that was local and true.
Yeah, I don't think it's a political statement, but I do think it reflects the politics of the time. I mean, the revival of, you know, the Canaanite style, as it was called then. All of that's reflective of this pre-ghetto period that was so, I mean, the rejection of ghetto names and trying to bring in Hebrew names, all of that, it seems to be part of that whole block of circumstance at the time.
Yes, and I think it's this combination of the surrounding and the actual needs. Mm-hmm. People needed to communicate with typefaces. There was, and it was a very short period of time where more Hebrew typefaces were created for that specific reason, and they all carry those meanings as well.
Thank you. Sean, thank you. Shani, there's a few questions about Ismar David's circle, about did he know Henri Friedlander or the British designer Abram Gaines, or was he influenced by any designer or calligrapher contemporary to his life?
Mm-hmm. It's a very good question. And again, as far as Friedlander or the other type designers of those really critical Hebrew typefaces that were produced around that time, we have correspondence and in both archives of his connection to Friedlander. Not very clear if they were working together or if they were friends, but we have very little correspondence, and we have sketches of their work in one another's archive. So there was a connection. He works with Spitzer. And again, we don't know the nature of their work together, but we know that there was a correspondence and maybe some consulting work around David Hebrew. And I'm not sure, I can't positively say about more people at the moment, but I can tell you that we keep discovering more and more people that were related to him. And it's very exciting, and I think it's a very important aspect of the research of his work, of understanding the circle and the network that he was working with, because nobody really works alone, right? We're all working together. We have to, technically, and it really is interesting to see how influence it has on one another. So at the moment, I don't have a lot of information on it, but I sure will in the future. It's definitely very interesting.
Shani, there's a question from Hetty. Did Ismar David learn to do Torah script, and at what age? So that's really speaking to his early life, childhood.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know. I know that he was reading. He was reading both scripts at home. I don't have enough information about that. I will definitely look that out. We know that, again, his most, for now, is the biggest influence that he had was through his education in Berlin. So it's a good question, and I will look into that. Sorry, I don't have the answer.
Okay. So there's so much excitement, but we are at an hour, and I want to be mindful of everybody's time. Perhaps, Shani, you can close out with how they could learn more about the Carry, or direct very targeted questions to you.
Yes, of course. So yeah, please email me. We have my contact on the Carry website. With any question, you only need to take into consideration that sometimes I start to talk and I never shut up, because I'm very excited about this topic. But please do ask away. I'm very happy to answer, and I'm always learning from these questions. So I would like that very much. You can also look online for previous talks that I gave on this subject. My Reading thesis is online. Another article that was published in the last issue of Visible Language. Another very specific thing that is related to his type design in Hebrew. And I'll be sure to keep posting online resources. Amelia shared with you the link to our digital collection. So that has a lot of items now, and it will be growing, all very high resolution, wonderful images that you can just enjoy and learn from.
One of my favorites is all the letter set, David Hebrew, that just went up on that collection.
Oh, yes.
So everybody loves press type, right? So, all right. Well, if there's no more questions, this has been such a wonderful experience. Thank you. And thank you. And keep looking for different kinds of Carry Online events that we'll be running through the summer. And keep in touch. Thank you. Thank you, Shani.
Thank you all.
Everybody.
Thank you, Amelia.
Well done.
Cheers.
Bye.